Yeah, what up? Welcome in. It is the Nail in the Coffin podcast. I'm your host, Drayson Ball. Glad you joined us today. On today's show, I'm going to be giving you my baseball power rankings. That's right, the best 10 teams in the major leagues this season. And also going to be bringing at you my NFC North predictions for the upcoming NFL season. It's all coming up on today's edition of the Nail in the Coffin podcast. And jumping right into things with my MLB power rankings for the season at this point. Going to be giving you the 10 best teams in baseball this year. It's been a really good year, really good season for baseball. Let's not waste any time. Let's start off with our honorable mentions, those teams that are just outside the top 10 of my MLB power rankings. Starting with the Colorado Rockies. That's right, the Colorado Rockies. They just swept the Atlanta Braves. Yeah, that's right. I said it, and I'm not happy about it. I've said it before on this podcast, I'm a big Braves fan, and the Rockies just swept my Braves, and I'm not happy about it. We'll get to that in just a minute. But they're an honorable mention on my top 10 list here. Played really well. They've got a really good lineup, and their pitching is surprisingly good. Their pitching is actually surprisingly good. And they've done a really good job in a tough division. Really good job in a tough division. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games, so they're playing good baseball right now. And they play well on the road. 8 games over 500 for the Rockies on the road. Currently second right now in the NL West behind the Arizona Diamondbacks, who we will be seeing on this list. And my other honorable mention is the Philadelphia Phillies. They play in a great division as well with the Braves and the Nationals, and they're just a half game out of first as well. They play tremendous at home. They play really, really well at home. Almost a 22 difference as far as win-losses, 41-22 with their home record. So they play very well at home, but on the road they do struggle. Below 500 on the road. So they're just outside of my top 10, the Colorado Rockies and the Philadelphia Phillies. And now, cracking into the top 10, one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in baseball right now, the St. Louis Cardinals. Like, where did they come from? Like, where did they come? Weren't they like terrible to begin the season? I mean, I can't hardly remember because they weren't anywhere in the discussion the first 95 games of the season. I mean, it's been the last 20-25 games that they've been playing excellent baseball. And they've come out of nowhere. And they're playing very, very well right now. They're red hot. They are in a tough division, though. The Cubs and the Brewers are sitting atop that division. And they've been playing very well as well, the Cubs and the Brewers. But right now, the St. Louis Cardinals are red hot. Red hot. Look for them to keep climbing up the wild card and the playoff positioning coming towards the end of the season. They're playing great baseball right now. At number 9, the Seattle Mariners. They had a tremendous start to the season. They played really well in May and June and July. But they've come back to earth a little bit. And they're playing right now behind the Houston Astros and the Oakland Athletics. 4.5 games behind the Astros for the lead. But look, they're a good team, but the American League right now is loaded. I mean, most of my teams, let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of my 10 teams are American League teams. And I could have easily put 7 or 8. The American League is loaded this season. Absolutely loaded this season. And let's just, can we just take a time out for just 1 second and talk a little bit about the postseason playoff format? Let's look at this for a second. Speaking of how great the American League is, let's look at this. The Boston Red Sox, Cleveland Indians, and the Houston Astros are leading their division. The Yankees and the Athletics are the two teams that would play in the wild card game. And the Seattle Mariners are left off the playoffs. They're left out of the playoffs. And they're 71-54. They're 71-54. And they're going to be left out of the playoffs. Either them or the Athletics or the Yankees. Can you believe that? I'm not a fan of the playoff format as it is right now. And I don't mean to be critical. I don't. I do like the play-in game. I do like having the aspect of a playoff game, but or a play-in game, excuse me, with the 2 wildcard teams. But I think it could be better, especially in a season like this where the Seattle Mariners are probably going to win 95 games and be left out of the playoffs. I don't think that's right. I think it would be served at least better to do kind of like the how the NFL does it, where the top 2 record teams are automatically into the playoffs, and then you have a play-in game with the 3rd and 4th and the 5th and 6th teams. Kind of have a 4 wild card play-in game. Now it would have to be restructured with the conferences or the divisions, because you can't obviously have a division winner playing in a play-in game. The division winners, it's just kind of messy. I don't know the solution. I'd really have to look into it and dive deeper into the best solution. But it's just not fair that this season the American League is going to have one of those 3 teams in all likelihood left off: the Yankees, the Athletics, or the Mariners, just because they've had a tremendous season. Anyway, off my soapbox. That's my soapbox for the day. Number 8, the Atlanta Braves. They're still in the top 10. I really struggled putting them in the top 10, and blame my bias, I guess. I didn't really want to put them on here, but I do think they're one of the 10 best teams in the league right now. They did just get swept by the Rockies, and they looked really bad, especially their bullpen in that series. They gave up like 7 or 8 runs in the 9th inning of that series. It just was embarrassing, really embarrassing for the Braves. But I do have them at 8. I do like their pitching coming down the stretch. They do have a lot of good arms. They do have a lot of strong pitching down the stretch. Hopefully their bullpen will come along. But they do have a lot of young talent, and I'm just wondering if they will buckle down the stretch. They're in a tight division race right now with the Philadelphia Phillies, and you don't count the Nationals out yet either. I cannot at this point in the season count the Nationals out, even though they are 6.5 games behind the Braves for first place in that division. But I'm just wondering if their young talent will buckle under a pressure kind of filled playoff run towards the end of the season. Now, one thing about the Braves is they do play the Phillies 7 times in the last 2 weeks of the season. So 7 out of their last 10 or 11 games in the last 2 weeks of the season are against the Philadelphia Phillies. So that will decide the division, in my opinion. That's going to decide that division, and we'll see if the Braves or the Phillies will come out on top. But again, don't count out the Nationals. At number 7, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've been playing tremendous and consistent baseball all season long. I really like the way that they play, and they're in a tough division as well, and they're in first place in that division. Who would have thought 120 games, 115 games into the season that the Arizona Diamondbacks would be in first and the LA Dodgers would be in third? I mean, who'd have thought that? The Dodgers coming off a World Series Game 7 heartbreak. They were in the World Series, so they were good enough to get there. But who'd have thought 115 games into the season the Dodgers would be in third place? Not me. Not me. The Dodgers aren't even 10 games over 500. 67 and 58 as of now. And, I don't count the Dodgers out either. They're only 2 games back, and they're right there in the wild card standings as well. Just a game and a half out of the wild card standings. And look, they're so talented, the Dodgers, that I cannot see them not making the playoffs. I just can't. So the Arizona Diamondbacks at 7. Can they hold off the Dodgers and the Rockies? I don't know. I don't know if I believe in the Rockies going down the stretch as much as I do as much as I do the Dodgers. At number 6, the Cleveland Indians. I had to put them here, but I didn't like putting them here. I'm not very high on the Cleveland Indians. Now, they've been playing better baseball as of late. They have got to 71 wins, which let's give credit where it's due. 71 wins would be best in the National League. And as low, I'm just not very high on them, and that feeling I have to give them credit because they are a really good team in a much tougher league, the American League. And they have got a 71 and 52, which like I said would be the best, tied for the best record in the National League. But they are in a weak division. The AL Central is garbage, hot garbage. I mean, the Minnesota Twins are in second place. They're 5 games below 500, and they're 12 games out of first. They're 12 games out of first. The Kansas City Royals are 33.5 games out of first place. 38 wins for the Royals. So they don't play in a great division, but they are a good team. They have been playing well as of late. They're very good at home, and they've won 8 out of the last 10. So they're playing well right now. At number 5, the Chicago Cubs. That's right, the beloved Cubbies. At number 5, they're playing great too as well. They kind of were up and down to begin the season, and with the Cardinals and the Brewers lurking closely behind them, they got their work cut out for them. They are great at home. They're 38-23 at home, and they play more home games than road games to end the season. The last 40 games or so, more than half of them are on their home turf, which is good for them because they win more games at home than they do on the road. They're better at home than they are on the road. But I do think their division is up for grabs. I do think it's up for grabs. They do have a 3.5 game lead over the second place Brewers, but I think both the Brewers and the Cardinals are very talented teams, and they could push them for a late playoff push. At number 4, the defending World Series champions, the Houston Astros. Look, the first 20 or 30, 40 games of the season, they were the best team in baseball, but they're not anymore. They're not anymore. They're a very great team. I love their pitching. I love their pitching staff. And their offense is great too, but I love their pitching. They're tremendous on the road. Unbelievable on the road. 42-20 on the road. It's really weird because they're only 33-29 at home. It's weird. They're 22 games over 500 on the road. And they're about 500 team at home. So I do like that they're great on the road. And I'm not too concerned about winning at home because in the playoffs, it's easier to win at home than it is on the road. So it bodes well for them that they can win on the road here in the regular season. And I do think that will help them going forward in their playoff push. At number 3, the New York Yankees. Yes, the mighty Yankees and the new school Bronx Bombers. Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge and all those, that talented lineup, that easily the most dangerous lineup in baseball. They might not have necessarily the best lineup, but it is the most dangerous. You leave a fastball over the middle to Giancarlo Stanton, and we saw what he did the other day. What was it, 475 feet to the opposite field? Something like that. I mean, their lineup is just deadly. If you make any mistake, it will cost you. But their pitching is not. No, their pitching isn't bad either. They've got great pitching, and it's kind of they're destined for the wild card. I mean, they're 9.5 games out of first place behind the Boston Red Sox, who we will see on this list if you hadn't guessed that already. So they're playing for the wild card spot, and they're pretty much secure in that spot. They're 4 games right now at this point. Again, a lot of season still to play, still 40 plus games for most teams, still to play. But they do have a 4-game lead on the first wild card spot. So I think that's kind of where they'll finish. Unless they have a tremendous collapse towards the end of the year, I think they'll be in the wild card spot. At number 2, the Oakland Athletics. That's right, I said it. The Oakland A's. They just took 3 out of 4 from the Astros. They just played tremendous. They're playing tremendous right now, and they're on fire. And what's the saying about beware of the hot team? Isn't that the saying, beware of the hot team towards the playoffs? They're playing very good ball right now, and they just beat Houston a bunch of times in Houston. They only trail the Astros by 1 game. I do like the Astros in that division, but they are making a push, and I do like them to secure that second wild card spot. And unfortunately for the Seattle Mariners, will bump them out of the playoffs for this season. And at number 1, that's right, you guessed it, the Boston Red Sox. They're unbelievable. They're absolutely unbelievable. They're 51 games over 500. 51 games over 500. That's really, really good. That's really, really good. 88-37 at this point in the season with 35, 40 games to go. Their starting lineup and their starting rotation is loaded with talent. They got the AL MVP Mookie Betts, who's having an all-time season. Really, really good for the young guy, the young outfielder. Does he play outfield now? I don't know. Mookie Betts is tremendous, and they're virtually unbeatable at home. 44-16 at home, virtually unbeatable. They're on pace to set the all-time wins record, which stands at 116 of the Seattle Mariners. That's right, Seattle Mariners 116, and they're not going to make the playoffs this season. But will that come back to haunt them? We saw the Mariners. What was it, 2001 or 2002, somewhere around there, had 116 wins and then got bumped in the first round of the playoffs. Will that come back to haunt them? I don't know. I don't think so. They're really, really good. They are really, really good. So that'll do it. That is my MLB power rankings. Going to be doing this a little bit more often towards the end of the season, and then obviously we'll get into more of the playoffs as they come around in the next month or so. Now transitioning into what I've been doing for the last couple of episodes of the Nail in the Coffin podcast, giving you my NFC North predictions, giving you my division by division picks. I started out with the AFC North, then I went to the NFC North. Last episode I did the AFC East, and this episode going to be doing the NFC East. I think I might have said NFC North a few times. NFC East predictions for the upcoming NFL season. Let's get started right away and jump right into it. I got the Eagles at number 1 in this division. I have them finishing at 10-6 for the season. I'm going to pull back a little bit this year. I do like the Eagles. I really like the Eagles, but I do have some concerns as well. After coming off a Super Bowl season, it is tough to do it again. What is it they say, that it's hard to win a Super Bowl, but it's even harder to win 2? I do like their roster, and I think they do have a tremendous upside, but they play in one of the toughest divisions in football, in my opinion. One of the toughest, if not the toughest, in my opinion. So I do think they will pull back slightly from last year. Don't forget, Carson Wentz is coming off an ACL injury. And, all signs point towards he may or may not be back for week 1 of the season. And quite frankly, I don't know why they would rush him back. I wish they would, shoot for a week 3, week 4, week 5 return, just to give a few extra weeks on that knee to heal. Because I do think the upside of having Carson Wentz on your team it is worth waiting out a few more weeks. But when he does come back, let's keep an eye on how he plays. Will he be as dynamic as he was in the first half of last season? Remember, he was going to win the MVP last season. He was on pace until he got injured in the last couple of weeks of the season. So will he return to that form, or will he be somewhat of a slightly lesser version of what he was last season? It'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. But I do like the Eagles. They will make the playoffs at 10-6. I think they'll be right around the 3rd or the 4th seed. They will win the division, so they'll get the 3rd or the 4th seed. They won't be needing a playoff or a wild card spot to get in. So they will get one of the 3 or 4 seeds at 10-6. Their schedule is not terrible, but it is a first place schedule. Last season they didn't have a first place schedule, and that's they got a lot of breaks there, in my opinion. But they do have a first place schedule this season, and so I'm wondering how they will fare with the first place schedule. They do face some of their tougher opponents at home. They do play the Colts at home, the Vikings at home, and the Panthers at home. But it does get a little tougher down the stretch. The last half of the season, really from week 10 to week 17, is not a lot of there's not a lot of easy wins there. Home for the Cowboys, the Giants, the Redskins, and the Texans. But then they also have the Saints, Cowboys, Rams, and Redskins on the road. So a pretty tough final stretch for the Eagles. I do see them pulling back just a little bit this year, but they will win that division. Next up is the Cowboys. Yes, the Cowboys at 9-7. I think they'll be in the hunt. I think they could sneak into a wild card spot at 9-7. They will be right there. It will come down to matchups and tiebreakers and all that kind of thing. But I think they'll make the playoffs in my gut. I think they will be in one of the 2 wild card spots. I like them this season. I really do. And I think 9-7 could be way low. It could be they, win 10, 11, 12, 13 games even. But I think 9-7 is probably where they'll finish, but it could be very low. I think they will benefit, obviously, from having a healthy Zeke all year, plus not having to deal with the suspension issues of last season. I think that distraction will really help them, be more focused. And I think because of that, they'll be a better team this season than they were last season. But I do think the key with the Cowboys resides in Dak. And if he will be more like the Dak we saw in his rookie season versus the Dak we saw last year. And I think with a healthy Zeke all season, he will return more towards his rookie season self than his last year's kind of production. So if he can return to form, I think they can be really good. Now their wide receiver core is not great. Let's not be honest; it's one of the worst, if not the worst. But I think having Zeke will take a lot of pressure off their wide receiver core, and I think Dak will play better than he did last season. I like their schedule. They do have a few tough games on the road. They play at the Packers, at the Seahawks, at the Falcons, and at the Colts. And their toughest stretches from week 10 to week 15. They play at the Eagles, at the Falcons, and at the Colts. But they also host the Saints and the Eagles. So they play the Eagles twice in 5 weeks. And the Saints, Falcons, Colts, and Redskins as well. So that's a really tough stretch for them. If they can come out, 3-3 or 4-2, that would be tremendous for them at that point in the season. Now, also circle on your calendars December 30th. They play the Giants in New York. That game could have playoff implications. As far as a wild card seed. So circle that game, week 17, December 30th. Up next, the Giants, the New York Giants, coming in at 3rd place in this division, which could be low or it could be high. I don't really know with the Giants this season. It's just kind of a weird division. It's really tough, and it's going to be really competitive, and I could see it going several different ways. But I do feel pretty good with the Giants at 8-8. Look, that last year was kind of an anomaly. They were terrible last year. They lost their 3 best wide receivers within the first couple of weeks of the season. And that hurt. That hurt a lot. I think they'll be healthier this season. And I think Eli can still play, although he's not what he used to be. But they will bounce back this season. I'm really excited to see Saquon Barkley and what he'll do in the NFL this season. I think he'll take off a lot of pressure from Eli Manning. And I think because of that lightened pressure, Eli will be able to hook up with OBJ a little bit more. And I think they will bounce back. So 8-8 for them. The tough thing is their schedule is absolutely brutal. Really, really brutal. It's tough to find wins for them in the first 8 weeks of the season. It is. Let me just give you the first 8 weeks of the season. Home to the Jaguars, at the Cowboys, at the Texans, home to the Saints, at the Panthers, home to the Eagles, at the Falcons, home to the Redskins. A really, really tough 8 games to begin this season. Then they have their bye week in week 9. So, if they go 3-5 in the first 8 games, I think that would be a win for them. It's really tough to find wins for them in the first 8 weeks of the season. If they can come out with 3-5 at the bye week, I think it'll be really good for them. It does lighten up a little bit towards the end of the season, but they could be out of it already by November. So the last 5 weeks are winnable games. Bears, Redskins, Titans, Colts, and Cowboys could be winnable games. 4 out of 5 at least could be winnable. Cowboys would be a really good game, but it is at home. But they might already be out of it. So we'll see. We'll see for them. 8-8 for them in the hunt. I think they could potentially sneak into a playoff spot if they get to 9 wins. But the NFC is loaded this year. They'd have to get to at least 9 wins. 8 wins won't get them into the playoffs. But I have them in the hunt. And finally, the Redskins. and this is really hard to put them in last place. I have them at 7-9 and just outside of the playoffs, but I like the Redskins. I just don't see that. I don't see them making a lot of headway this season. I like them. I think they're a good team, and I think Alex Smith can play well in that system. But I just don't like him in this division. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they'll be able to make a lot of headway in this division. Like I said, it's one of the toughest divisions, if not the toughest in the NFL. So they will be highly competitive. They're going to be in every single game. Don't get me wrong. They're going to be competitive and in every single game. But, I mentioned their new quarterback, Alex Smith. It is a new system. We talked about this with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins. It's a new system. And how will the dynamic of learning a new system and a new offense, how will that play out? Will it cause issues, or will he fit in seamlessly? I think he'll play well, but again, it's a new system, and it might take some time to get used to, especially in a tough division. Their schedule is nasty as well, just really nasty. They have their bye week in week 4, which I didn't even know was possible. I didn't even know was possible. A week 4 bye for the Redskins, and that's 13 games, I guess, 13 games straight without a bye. It's really, really tough. Following their bye, here's their couple of weeks following their bye. At the Saints, home to the Panthers and Cowboys, at the Giants, and home to the Falcons. That's a really tough stretch between week 5 and week 9. So 7-9 is where I have them, and I just feel like they'll be really banged up by the end of the season. So 7-9 is where I have them. That's going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch, in my opinion, is the Washington Redskins. Because like I said, I do like them. I think they're a good team, but they play in a tough division. I just don't know where realistically I could put them, if not last at 7-9. So there you have it. Just a quick recap. Eagles will win the NFC East at 10-6. They will make the playoffs. Cowboys at 9-7. They'll be right there in the hunt. Got them at a wild card seed. The Giants at 8-8. They'll be in the hunt as well, but I do see them falling short of the playoffs this season. And the Redskins at 7-9. They will fall short of the playoffs. That's going to do it for today's edition of the Nail in the Coffin podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the video down below, and I will see you later.